Salutations, kings and queens, and welcome back to the Electric Leaf, where it is my goal to assist you with nourishing your mind, your body, and your chakras. Okay, so on my video, Finding Balance Through Triggers, someone had asked a question about how to deal with overwhelming emotions and pain and how to stay calm in those situations. And so I want to just take a moment to say thank you so much for asking that question that was relevant to the conversation so that we can go deeper and continue to heal together as a family. So firstly, when we're looking at overwhelming emotions, overwhelming means an excess amount, okay? So when we're looking at our emotions as being overwhelming, we're looking at we have an excess amount of energy, okay? An excess amount of energy. So what you want to initially do is to break that energy down into sections like you would do anything else that's in a large quantity. Like when you're doing your hair, especially us 4C girls, we break it down into sections. We work section by section. That's the easiest way to do it, right? When you're doing yard work, you work section by section. When you're doing a large thing, you're going to work section by section. So how you're going to section your emotions off is what is pertinent, what has to be handled right now, and what can wait. So things that need to be handled right now are the things that are causing the pain, and the pain needs to be recognized even down to the littlest or the most minuscule amount, okay? Because that's how it became overwhelming to start with, because we minimalized, that seems to be the word of the day today, we minimalized how we feel ourselves, and then it became more and more and more and more. So we're not going to do that right now. So now that we're able to see that we have a lot of emotions that we're dealing with, and we're sectioning things off, the things that are causing me pain are going to go right here, and the other things are going to go in the later pile. Now, once we've got our pile of the things that we're dealing with right now, and we begin to look at them, now we're going to look at what do I have control over versus what I do not have control over. This is where serenity comes in, and many of us have heard the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things that I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference, okay? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right? So as we're taking inventory of what we're feeling, this is where this wisdom comes up, okay? The wisdom comes up first, right? Because you have to know the difference between what you can change and what you cannot change. The things you can't change are like other people's feelings, other people's actions. You can't control anybody else. You can blackmail, you can threaten, but you don't have control over what anybody else does. You can't force someone to love you. You can't force someone to speak to you. You can't force someone to answer the phone. You can't force someone to respect you. You can't force someone to like you if they don't. You can't. So what you have to do is understand why that matters to you. Why does this other person's opinion matter to me? Why does this other person's feelings matter more than my own to me? Okay? And it always comes back to self-love. It always comes back to self-love. How we view ourselves, how we value ourselves. Okay? And you cannot reflect in this space in the ego. Now, I'm not speaking negatively about the ego, and I'm not speaking down on the ego, because y'all know my views on the ego. The ego has its place, and the ego is beautiful, necessary, and needed. The ego keeps us safe. But in that space, the ego has to be kept on a leash. All right, just like the flesh has to be kept on a leash at times. Well, that is a different conversation for a different day. So how you can learn, how you can train your ego so that you don't have to necessarily keep it leashed. It'll be like a trained dog, a trained pit bull, okay, is to practice being triggered, practice listening to your emotions. One thing that I've shared with you all before that I like to do that really helps me to control my temper, because I definitely, a temper is in my ego, okay? She's definitely in there. But one way that I have learned to control her a little bit better is by subscribing to YouTubers, podcasts, listening to radio shows, forging friendships with people who have completely different perspectives than I have. And whether we want to believe it or not, the universe sets us up like that through our family. Because a lot of times our family, we don't always agree with each other, right? But it's that blood that keeps us together most of the time, not all the time, all right? And that would be a different story for a different day as well. But you have to understand that you're gonna be triggered. The name of the game is to not be triggered. It's not to not be triggered. That's not the name of the game. The name of the game is to be triggered and understand the stillness and the beauty and calmness of feminine energy, okay? But feminine energy does not work without being balanced with masculine energy, and vice versa. So when you're getting that feeling like you can't stay calm, don't be calm. Because if you have an excess amount of something, then you need to work to put everything in its place, or at least categorize it. All right? Categorize it. That's very important. And so after you've gotten everything categorized, then you can, and you're safe, and you're in a safe space, then you can be calm. Because see, a lot of times, something that we like to lie to ourselves with is we tell ourselves that we need certain connections and certain relationships in our lives that we don't, or we tell ourselves that we need to continue in certain alliances that aren't really alliances anymore. They're liabilities. All right? So sometimes we have to let go of certain situations and let them grow, blossom, and develop. Let people contemplate and let people heal, including ourselves. And then the universe will bring it back together in a healthier space. Because sometimes when you're feeling those overwhelmed feelings, especially if you're an empath, if you're feeling those overwhelming feelings along with pain, that is your emotional alarm system going off, telling you to make a change, to change your environment, to change the people that you are mostly around, because something is in a state of arrested development because of where you are and who you're listening to and what you're doing. Okay? So taking that inventory, putting things where they need to be, healing yourself from the inside out, actually listening to yourself. Because when you start to look at the things that need to be handled immediately that are causing you pain, you'll see that the current situation, 9 times out of 10, is not the source of the pain. It's only triggering the painful situations to come back up to the surface so that they can be healed. All right? So how you stay calm is to have compassion for the other person if you're able to. Okay? Understand that everything that a person says to you is not always about you. Sometimes the things that a person says to you is really and truly about how they feel about themselves. And if you can remember that in the heat of the emotion, then you will be able to live with yourself. And once the situation has gone on, you'll be able to self-reflect and say, you know what, even though I didn't like the situation, I am comfortable with the way I handled it. I am happy with myself for being honest and respectful. I'm happy with myself for speaking my truth even though my voice shook a little, or texting my truth even though my thumbs were shaking a little. I am proud of myself for being the light even though I was afraid to, even though I felt like my truth wasn't going to be heard, okay? And sometimes your truth is not going to be heard, but your relationship with yourself has to overshine any relationship with anybody else that's causing you any type of misery. Okay? So that's really it. You have to let certain things go. If you can't let the situation go with a person and forgive, then you have to kind of let that situation go, because the resonance of abuse, it gets louder and louder and stronger. That an abusive situation is the type of situation where it just has to be broken. The cycle has to be broken. The bond has to be broken. The ties have to be severed if there's abuse. And we also have to be able to recognize what abuse is. Abuse is more than just physical. It's so much deeper than just physical. And being able to accept the fact that we've been abused and that we've been hurt, and that we may have played a major role in why we were abused or why we were hurt. So, when you deny yourself the ability, like when you tell yourself, like, I have to stay calm, you're putting yourself into a state of resistance, because every situation doesn't require calmness. Some situations do warrant talking, and it might be uncomfortable. You know, mind you, I didn't say disrespect, okay? But some situations do warrant a need for emotions to be expressed on every spectrum. But you cannot be in a state where you have to name call, finger point, blame, shame, guilt. All of those things block your energetic pathways, okay? Taking responsibility for the way that you feel is going to be probably the most important step that you'll take on your healing path. Is taking that responsibility for the way that you feel, and recognizing that another person has no control over the way that you feel unless you give them that power. And a lot of times you're not going to have a person who's going to hold space for you and be compassionate towards you. All right? A lot of times when there are overwhelming feelings and pain, it's because there's a conflict at hand. And so it takes a lot of conflict resolution skills in order to, overcome those things as one, for two people to come together as one. So the shame, blame, and the guilt, okay? If we look at ourselves and recognize when someone is pointing fingers at us, okay? You have to remember that you got 1, 2, 3 more fingers pointing back at you. So when a person comes at you and they're telling you that it's your fault and you did this and you did that, you have to be able to say, okay, I forgive you. I forgive you. I'm not going to allow us to fight anymore. I'm not going to hate you. But what I am going to do is say, okay, I understand. You've got some emotions that you're dealing with too. So hold space for them. You're going to have to hold space for them. And that's why it's so important to find that wholeness through being single, and not just with romantic relationships, but that singleness of wholeness, of oneness, of understanding, like, this is who I am and this is how I feel. And that gives you an opportunity to be able to allow other people the space to be who they are and express how they feel as well. All right? So I hope that this has helped you on your journey. And if you have more questions, please ask and let me know. So until next time, family, continue to vibrate love and vibrate well. Peace.